this video a lot on my channel. It shows a window into my nostalgic childhood. But I have to admit that when I think of Mario 3, I don't picture this scene, sitting in the living room with my brother and my grandmother. I was so young then, video games were more like a novelty, a toy to spend a few minutes playing with before running outside to ride my bike. A distraction on rainy days or something like that. No, when I think of Mario 3, I think of college. My friend sold me this crystal clear GBA, which I've spoken about before. And being a broke college teen, I could only afford one game for it. Super Mario Advanced 4. The GBA re-release of the SNES port of Mario 3. It being the only game I had for the console for a long time, I got the most out of this little game that I could. Nerd! It traveled to many places with me. Family trips to Disney, college trips to Washington, D.C. I remember riding the subway in the Capitol and having complete strangers watch over my shoulder as I played the game on the train. I would eventually get more games for the little handhold, but even then I found I kept coming back to Mario 3 for more. It is my favorite 2D Mario game by a country mile, and the one I have definitely played the most over the years. But why? Whether you are playing the original or the remake, the game begins the same. World 1, map, and that little welcoming tune. I've seen and heard it 1,000 times, and it never gets old. Selecting level 1 is like sitting on the comfiest couch I have ever owned, and I'm instantly relaxed. All of World 1 is a celebration of Mario, the side-scrolling roots of the original, combined with the vertical scrolling prowess of the American sequel. You can hold items again in this game, and unlike Mario World, they give you access to the newest standout feature in the very first level. You can fly. This feature is such a revolutionary part of Mario 3 that every single Mario game since that does not include it in some form will receive some sort of criticism for it. These new power-ups really up the diversity of level types possible in the game. Mario 2 USA dabbled in verticality, but usually the scrolling went down, not up, in those levels, and if you did go up, there were specific scenarios governing how you could achieve this. In Mario 3, with a tail and some space, you can go up, up, and away anytime you want. P-Speed in general is a fun mechanic, allowing you a brilliant way to keep Mario from abusing his newfound freedom too much. Speedrunners have been milking the most out of this mechanic for decades now, and it's still fascinating to watch high-level players find ways to work at the edge of what the game allows. One thing to really appreciate, though, is the natural progression of player skill. There are no tutorials in World 1, and by level 3, there are plenty of bottomless pits to fall into. You can skip this level if you want, but if you do play and collect every coin, you are rewarded for your skill. The game encourages repeat play and mastery by hiding challenges into the very first level for skilled players and even shortcuts to later points in the game if the player wants to use them in the form of warp whistles. Items can also be banked for the first time. Collecting items through minigames and toad houses allows the player to select or store items for more difficult situations down the road. Some items can skip whole levels if the player does not want to complete them or is struggling to do so. Finishing World 1 leads to a second map. World 2 is the desert. These two locales could not be more different from one another, and lets the player know that there will be a large variety of locales to visit, with different themes. As the game progresses, these themes escalate in scope, building on each other and introducing new mechanics. Some are one-offs, like the boot in level 5-3. Others stick around for multiple levels, like World 4's gigantic enemies. Almost all the worlds are excellent and make you want to explore the whole game rather than skipping to the end, except World 6. I said before with Donkey Kong that I'm not the biggest fan of level gimmicks that can take away the player control. So, some might assume that the ice physics are what turned me off about World 6. In actuality, though, it's two levels in particular that bother me. 6-5 challenges the player to carry a shell while flying to the top of this cave while avoiding enemies who pick up and throw blocks at the player. Essentially, you either know what to do in this level, or you are subject to trial and error until you figure it out. Or to put it in a different way, you either have a Nintendo Power subscription or you don't. If you look at the map, you might think, well, not that big a deal. I'll miss the Toad House, but I can just go around. But joke's on you. 6-6 is another level that is going to suck lives off your counter. The tiny cave is filled with obstacles and gives you much less room to maneuver than you're used to. It's not impossible, but you will die or lose your power-ups in this level, and it will, for one of the few times in the game, feel like a cheap death because of the sheer amount of obstacles in a tiny space. I would argue that they knew they messed up pairing these two levels together. If you move 6-6 earlier or later, it would not be so egregious. But it was too late to fix it, so instead they came up with a compromise. There are two Hammer Brothers right by the junction for both of these levels, and if you struggle long enough, you will bump into one of them. One of them happens by coincidence to be carrying a cloud that skips levels. Anyway, World 7 more than makes up for World 6, and almost all the worlds are amazing concepts overall. World 4 and 5 are a lot of people's favorites, but personally World 7 might take the cake for me. The world is filled with two types of levels, puzzles/mazes and race to the finish levels. It is a tour de force, pushing the controls and the player to apply their skill earned to the fullest before the madness that is World 8. World 8 is also a fun challenge, but it also contains another type of level that is in abundance that's not my favorite type. They do not get to me like 6-5 and 6-6, but Mario 3 has a lot of auto-scroller levels. Again, a few is fine, but every world has at least one built in with the Koopa ships. These are fine, but if I prefer to be in control of the scrolling. But with few exceptions, there is so much creativity and fun to be had in the game that it far, far outweighs its weaker levels. Instead, the two in World 6 are really the only bad, in quotation mark, levels, and honestly, if they're not that bad, they just stand out compared to the other stellar levels in the game. I have said before that music is my weakest area for review, but Koji Kondo needs no introduction. The music is just the happiest assemblage of melodies ever, and you cannot help but hear any one of them and get a grin like an idiot. The whole game makes me grin all the way through it. The game gives off good vibes, and when other games grip you with story or depression and sorrow, you can count on Mario 3 with its music and carefree, colorful landscapes to ease away the pain. That's not to say the game is devoid of challenge. There is plenty here for every skill level to tackle. It is a rare type of game where you can fail over and over and still smile about it. It is easy to pick up and play, but has layers that make mastery of its mechanics highly enjoyable and rewarding. The game is timeless, and no matter what version of the game you are playing, you're going to have a good time.